Welcome to the Shmuley Show. And what a show we have today. A lot of it sad, a lot of it tragic, but that's the world we live in today. Number one, 2 Jews were stabbed in the neck, almost killed in London, Golders Green, Jewish area. I know the area well. Remember, I lived there 11 years. Number 2, King Charles is in New York today. Yawn, coma. Does anyone care? Why do we still care about monarchy? We'll talk about that. I haven't watched any of the coverage, to be he's a nice guy, but that's all I can say. Nice guy, nice institution. Who cares? And then the 250th anniversary of America. It's really interesting to have a British monarch here. What's that all about? I thought we kicked them out because we were not impressed with royalty. Turns out that even a quarter of a millennium doesn't erase people's nostalgia for like princesses and Disney fairy tales, et cetera, et cetera. Not that the House of Windsor is any kind of fairy tale. And by the way, one quick thing. I can't believe that King Charles is in the United States and he's not seeing his son who lives in America. You only have 2 kids, King Charles. You got to work it out with your son. I know all about family drama. I know all about it, but he's your son. These are your grandchildren. You don't want a relationship with him, and it makes you look terrible. You're hanging out with every important person in America, but not your own son or daughter-in-law, or at least wanting to see your grandchildren, for goodness sake. And I'm speaking now as a father. And you think my kids and I never have our kerfuffles? We do, but I want to be a loving father. That's what I most want to be in life, a loving husband and a loving father. Okay, let's get straight into why the UK. I lived in England for 11 years. You're all well aware of that. I was very controversial. I was the best known rabbi in the country, thank God, according to the media. I was in the media every day. I was on the BBC every day. I was on Sky News every day. I knew I was really much more than even here in the United States. I was a media personality. And even then, anti-Semitism was bad, anti-Israel, but not like today. So we had 2 Jews that were murdered and stabbed to death on Yom Kippur in Manchester. Now we have 2 Jews who are fighting for their lives. We pray for them. We comfort their families. But why the UK? I'll tell you why the UK. Because the UK became so woke and so open to anti-Semitic bigotry, not as if it weren't there. It was always there, but it was always throughout Europe. Why is the UK worse than Belgium? Why is it worse than Holland? Why are so many Jews being killed there? They allowed in so many Islamists, and they allowed so much Islamic rhetoric to go unchecked that it destroyed the country. This isn't just about the rise of anti-Semitism in the United Kingdom and whether a community of 230,000 has any future there. Most of the Jews there believe they don't have a future. They want to move to Israel. They want to move to other places, the United States, if they could get visas to get in. But why England? Because Islamist rhetoric is completely allowed. And the country condemns Israel so much. Keir Starmer, the prime minister, married to a Jewish woman, condemns Israel so much that all it does is incite hatred against Jews. And it becomes so normalized that killing a Jew is like killing a murderer. When you hear day and night in the UK press, the BBC is disgusting. Don't tell me the BBC is fair in any way whatsoever. And the BBC is mild on Israel. Their disgusting anti-Israel bigotry is mild compared to others. For anyone who watched my debate on Piers Morgan with Mohammed Hijab, Gabe was there with me literally in the studio. Okay, my brother and friend, colleague, Gabe, who's been there. Gosh, you've been at so many critical points in my life. Remember that day? I was there with Chana and you and Debbie. This guy, Mohammed Hijab, threatened the day after our debate. The debate was disgusting. Watch it, and it was watched by 10 million people. But the day after the debate, he threatened to murder my children on social media. I call it literally. He literally placed my children in body bags. You're allowed to do that in the UK. And then he asked, because they're IDF soldiers, he asked Hamas to murder my children, God forbid. So we went to Scotland Yard. We went, which is the London police, their FBI, who did so much, meaning nothing. They didn't even care. They never even got back to me. So when an Islamist, and he's a pig. He's a disgusting, vile pig. I mean, even this is the guy who says openly that the Quran allows 5-year-old girls to get married. He said this at Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park. He's a pig. There's allegations of him writing to people about golden showers, and I don't care about any of that. Do whatever the heck you want in your private life as long as you're not hurting people. But you're threatening to murder Jews. This guy goes around to Holocaust neighborhoods in London and taunts Holocaust survivors, and it's all allowed. And England is the worst place for anti-Israel violence and anti-Israel rhetoric. now, finally, after the Jews are being shot and murdered and stabbed and threatened, finally the government woke up and said that they're going to outlaw one group who openly supports Hamas. I forgot the name. What is it? Palestine Freedom, Gabe? I think it's called Palestine Freedom. Really? You finally outlawed a terrorist group? You finally said that you're not allowed to go into the streets and say, kill all the Jews? And even that is probably, it's in the front of the high court now. It's about to lose because it undermines free speech. It undermines free speech. You're allowed to say, kill all the Jews and incite hatred and incite murder. That's good. That's sick. That is not, they don't have a constitution anyway, so they don't have a First Amendment. But it's not First Amendment. Saying that people should be murdered is called incitement to hatred. It's a hate crime. So Jews are being targeted for murder. Gabe said to me, Shmuley, why don't you address whether hatred of Jews results from hatred of Israel, or there's an equivalency between hatred of Israel? I will, Gabe, but you have to understand, well before Israel even existed, Jews were hated in England and Europe. Well before Israel existed, the Jews were expelled from England in the year 1290. I know this whole history because the history is in my book, Moses of Oxford. They were brought back, interestingly, only when Charles I lost his head, literally, when he was beheaded. So Cromwell became the Lord Protector of England, and he was approached by a rabbi from Amsterdam named Menashe ben Israel, and Cromwell was a very devout Christian. He was a Puritan, like a Calvinist. And so Menashe ben Israel convinced him that unless the Jews come back and are dispersed throughout the world, as the Bible says, then the second coming of Jesus cannot happen. And that's why Cromwell let them back. But Cromwell's reign, he died, and his son became Lord Protector, and then we brought back Charles III. Jews were persecuted again. The university where I served as rabbi for 11 years, Oxford University, only allowed the first Jew to become a don, a professor, I think in 1924. And I think they only allowed Jews back in the 1880s. So the first thing you have to talk about is how anti-Semitism in England existed well before Israel. Then let's talk about the fact that while Jews were being gassed at a rate of 10,000 a month, the British didn't let them into Palestine, and they said that the land can't support that many people. At the time, there were a maximum of 500,000 Arabs, a maximum of about 300,000 Jews, 800,000. Today, Israel is a country of nearly 11 million people with one of the strongest economies on earth. The British simply allowed Jews to die in Treblinka and Majdanek and Gross-Rosen and Auschwitz. So and that was before Israel existed. So let's not talk about the state of Israel. The British were gross and are gross. There are some great British statesmen. Churchill was a Zionist. Churchill was a lover of Israel. But Churchill's the one, while he fought and defeated Hitler with the United States and with Stalin, but while he fought Hitler, he also closed the borders of Palestine. Throughout the Holocaust, Britain had this crazy policy. And you imagine this, Gabe? Throughout the war, they had, on the one hand, they know the Jews are being killed, gassed 10,000 a day. They know that no country will take them. And they're fighting Hitler every day. On the other hand, they won't let the Jews go into a completely barren wasteland called Palestine because they didn't want there to be some ruptures between the Arabs and the Jews. So the Jews died and died and died. And that's the mixed legacy of Winston Churchill, that he was a Zionist who didn't allow any Jews to go to Zion. That was all before Israel. So now, since Israel was created, the Islamists are out of control. I saw it at Oxford. They're out of control in England, more than any other country. And let's distinguish between Muslims and Islamists, as I always do. And I want to make this point. If you go to the most expensive areas of central London, so we're talking Mayfair, Knightsbridge, Regent's Park, St. John's Wood, you will see, maybe St. John's Wood is more Jewish, but you will see 50% probably Muslims in the center of London. You go to Edgware Road, and it's all Muslim. Everything's in Arabic. I have no issue with that whatsoever. I love my Muslim brothers and sisters. Nearly all of the Muslims that you see in Harrods, most famous department store in the world, you've been there, Gabe, right? 50% of the people are Muslim who are shopping there. I have no issue. These are successful people who've worked hard. Some of them come from oil-rich families or dynasties, but by and large, these are successful Muslims who want the freedoms of the West. They may dress in the hijab, etc. And what do they like Jews, hate Jews? What do I care? As long as they don't express hatred of Jews, and they don't. And that's what's so interesting. The issue is not the rise of Muslims in England, because I stay in central London when I'm there. I'm surrounded by Muslims. They all know who I am because I do so much British TV, and they just leave me. A lot of them come over and debate me nicely, and they're very nice. The issue, everyone says, London has been taken over by Muslims, which in large part it has. There's nothing problematic about that, as long as they're peaceful and want the freedoms of Western society. So that's what's interesting. If you go to Mayfair, Knightsbridge, Harrods as a Jew with a yarmulke, you're safe. It's when you go to the Islamist neighborhoods, you have hundreds of thousands of Islamists. They're the ones that are marching on Pall Mall. They're the ones that are marching outside Parliament, and they are so aggressive. But then the problem is that the mainstream Muslims, who really hate the Islamists and know they give them a bad name, they don't speak out against them because they're afraid. The rich, well-to-do Muslims who you see walking on Oxford Street, who you see walking in Hyde Park, they hate the Islamists. They know the Islamists give them a bad name, but they're afraid to speak out against them because they're afraid of dying. So England has a terrible Islamist problem. Now let's address your issue, Gabe. Has it been exacerbated by hatred of Israel? Of course. They're saying, and here's where the government comes in. Starmer's disgusting. You have a Jewish wife. You have Jewish kids. Don't you know the Islamists want to kill them? They don't distinguish between Jews and Zionists. For them, there's just one caboodle. Jews are murderers. The more you say that Israel is an aggressive genocidal state that is a nation of baby killers, like I was attacked by that disgusting Faiz Akbar at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami, who quoted Muhammad Hijab and who quoted my debate against Muhammad Hijab and parroted his talking points. He said that I'm a baby killer. I, an American Jew, I'm a baby killer. I love killing babies. Now, how he knew I love killing babies, which is something I do almost every night, and we try to keep that very quiet. We don't do it on social media. We don't do videos about it. Gabe and I tape the stuff all the time of me killing babies, decapitating babies, drinking the blood of babies, taking the blood of babies. And how many matzahs did we make with the blood of babies just before Passover, Gabe? I mean, freaking like a truck full. We supplied half of Jewish New York, but I don't know how he knew that. The point is, when an Islamist can call me, and by the way, if only I were just joking. People actually believe this stuff. He actually called me a baby killer, threatened my life as a baby killer. When people hear this stuff, that Israel's genocidal, of course it impacts on how they see Jews. I mean, Gabe, do you really seriously, like if let's take African Americans. If I am a Klan white supremacist racist, and I say every day, Africa is a total crap hole, and Africans, God forbid, and I start using the most disgusting racial slurs. I'm not even going to say it as a joke, but I refer to them as primates, or the way Charles Darwin did, by the way. And I speak about how black people in Africa are criminals, wild, God forbid, as was said by Darwin, of low intelligence. Darwin said they were the missing link between humans and primates, okay? If I say that day and night, you want to tell me that's not going to spill over to African Americans here in the United States? African Americans? If I'm allowed to go on a binge every day that Africans, black-skinned people, dark-skinned people are primates, you think that's not going to make me a racist here in the U.S. and maybe invoke violence against them? God forbid. Of course it will. Of course it will. So when you say every day that Jews in Israel are murderers, baby killers, and they're just trying to survive against Hamas, Hezbollah, of course Jews in Golders Green are going to be stabbed in the neck.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah. You got to say it loud. You still have not, all of you who are watching, gave us such important commentary. We have the most interesting discussions. And I've begged him to get a stupid microphone where he's sitting because he's controlling everything. And he won't just, is there a reason you won't get a microphone? Is that like punishing the audience? Because then you have to, they don't even hear you. So I have to repeat your questions. Go ahead.
My question is,
yeah.
Don't so many British Jews, American Jews, synagogues, schools, send their kids to Israel, send money to Israel, send their kids to find the IDF? So is there really a difference?
You know, that's interesting. So Gabe is saying to me, but wait a second. The reason why Jews are being attacked as British Jews in England is that they support Israel. Here's the interesting.
Aren't your kids?
Here's a fun fact for you. British Jews are actually the most critical of Israel. when I was in Oxford and I hosted Benjamin Netanyahu twice. It was Jewish students at Oxford that came out with Palestinian students, but mostly Jewish students who protested. When I brought Ariel Sharon, it was Jewish students who protested. When Bibi came as prime minister, remember he was prime minister 96 to 99. I was still living at Oxford at the time. It was world famous British Jews. I'm pretty sure, like Sir Harold Pinter, the world famous playwright. These guys were taking out full page ads in the Times condemning Israel Jews. Sir Isaiah Berlin, who was the greatest British thinker of the 20th century, with him, Bertrand Russell. I was very close to Sir Isaiah Berlin. He said about Yitzchak Shamir, the prime minister of Israel at the time, he said publicly, the prime minister of Israel, I won't even talk to him because he's a brick wall and a person doesn't speak to brick walls. It's funny you say that because British Jews are actually the least Zionist. Golders Green would be a more pro-Israel neighborhood, but the Jews, they're being killed everywhere, Gabe. So it doesn't hold up because then if your theory is that the Jews of the diaspora support Israel, therefore they're being attacked, British Jews support Israel the least of probably any diaspora community in the world. By the way, look at South Africa. South Africa is anti-Semitic, hates Israel. I love South Africa, and I love the memory of Nelson Mandela. I was there in 94 when he became president, and I've been there countless times. By the way, there's terrible crime in South Africa, but it's not targeted against Jews, interestingly. It's against everybody. And Elon Musk would say, especially if you're white. And there is some truth to that. Maybe some of my black brothers and sisters in South Africa feel, well, they've taken too much of the land and there's no equal distribution. But a lot of whites are being attacked, but it's not Jewish specifically. So think about that, Gabe. You have a country that hates Israel more than any other in the world, South Africa. I mean, diaspora, South Africa. But they're not targeting Jews. Why not? I'll tell you why. Black South Africans are not anti-Semitic. It's really interesting. If anything, many are anti-white. And some would say they have every right to be. I'm not going to get into that Elon Musk debate, okay? But they're not anti-Semitic. You know that I have a child there, studying there right now. There's no anti-Semitic attacks. He may be attacked or mugged or something just because he's walking the streets. It's terrible crime. No one denies that. But he's not attacked because he's wearing a yarmulke. So your theory doesn't hold up.
I don't.
The British are just anti-Semitic. So they may find Israel as an excuse because they've had a 1,000-year history of grotesque anti-Semitism amidst their great redeeming quality of having fought and defeated Hitler. Not because of the Jews. They didn't care about the Jews. They didn't let the Jews into, they didn't give a damn about the Jews. It was because Hitler was going to take over Britain and take over Europe. Still, I give them credit. But let's not say that this is about Israel. It's not about Israel. And there's no correlation. But let's stay on Britain for a second. Wait, you see, without a microphone, you can't even give me a proper response because I think I gave you a logical answer. I still want to give you the opportunity to come back at me, but you don't have a damn microphone. Can you fix that by tomorrow, finally? Okay. Let's talk about Prince Charles visiting the United States on the occasion of our 250th birthday. I find monarchy so boring. I met Queen Elizabeth. There's a special blessing in Judaism that we say when you meet a queen. I said the blessing. She was a class act. I met Prince Charles. He gave a lecture, interestingly, about Islam at the opening of the Oxford Islamic Center 25 years ago. I was there. I think I met him on another occasion. I met Princess Diana. Can you imagine? Very briefly, I was with my daughter Mushki. It was, I think it was the morning of Shavuot, the Jewish holiday, and we were walking back from the prayers. You stay up the whole night studying. I'm pretty sure it was a beautiful summer day, and she was outside Queen's College, one of the colleges on Oxford's main street, on the main street. It's called the Oxford High Street. And we got on the line. It was a very short line. And listen to this. I introduced my daughter Mushki. Mushki remembers it well, even though she was probably 6 or 7. And I said, Princess Diana's right there. Remember, she was dressed very elegantly. And I said, look, Mushki, a real live princess. And believe it or not, Diana says to my daughter, no, I'm not a real princess. That was a bummer. And she looked really sad. This is before everything came out about the divorce and her bulimia, and she did not look happy. But she was so gracious, very kind woman. I mean, the whole interaction was a minute, if that. But I went to Buckingham Palace to these, what's it called? ICC, International Christians in ICJ, whatever it's called. The Council of Christians and Jews. Council of CCJ, yeah, and the Queen was the patron, I think, King Charles. King Charles is a very nice man, and he has stood with the Jewish community through many anti-Semitic attacks. He went to the synagogue in Manchester. But what I don't get about how nutso all of our top officials were yesterday, everybody, our great president, whom I love, and his wife, Melania, is a class act, but Marco Rubio, everybody. Okay, you show respect to a head of state, but I really don't care. Did any of you watch, like the whole idea of America was no nobility, no dukes, no earls, no counts, and certainly no kings. By the way, Gabe, here's a fun fact. During the war, in the beginning of 1941, when Britain was eviscerated by the Wehrmacht, and they barely got 350,000 troops out of Dunkirk, and they thought that Operation Sea Lion that Hitler was going to invade Britain, they were planning to evacuate. Listen to this. They were planning to evacuate the royal family to Canada, which was a British province, right? The Commonwealth. Do you know that Franklin Delano Roosevelt told Churchill that the king and queen, King George VI and his wife Elizabeth, the queen, who would later be called the Queen Mother, could come with their two daughters, Queen Elizabeth II and her sister Margaret. They can come to North America to escape Nazi tyranny in case Britain is overrun and invaded, but they have to go to the Bahamas or Barbados. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt wrote, because the people of North America, and he's speaking now for all of North America, people, the Americas, repudiate the idea of royalty. They would not want kings on the North American continent or South American continent. They were going to make them go to Barbados, which was a British colony. Isn't that interesting? So even back then we knew, nice guy, we're not that impressed. You know what FDR did with George VI? George VI came, I think, was it 39 or 40? There's a famous movie made about it called Something on the Hudson, starring Bill Murray. You should see it. Franklin Delano Roosevelt made George VI and his wife stay at his Hyde Park estate. They stayed in a very simple bedroom. You can go and visit that bedroom till today. It's smaller than this studio. And that's where the king and queen. And what FDR was showing them is, we're not that impressed with royalty. And then the next day, Eleanor Roosevelt made them a famous lunch of hot dogs. And she had Native Americans singing, playing drums. Remember this? It's a very famous thing. Did you see the video? And you see the King of England trying to eat a hot dog with a fork and a knife. And then, Eleanor Roosevelt says, no, Your Majesty. Maybe she even called him George. I don't know. She said, you just pick it up. And then she wolfs down a hot dog. And then you see the King of England touching food with his fingers in public for the first time, going, oh, yes. Delicious, is it not? Is it not, darling? Oh, yes, George. It is so delicious. So let me be clear. I don't dislike the British royal family. I think that Charles is actually a sweet guy. I think he treated his wife like crap, but I don't know people's marriages. He seems happy with Camilla. I'm happy for him. You know what I would say to him, though? Charles, do me a favor. You're in New York right now as I'm broadcasting. Please do me a favor. Do yourself a favor. Go even quietly. Visit your son. Fly out to California. You have a private plane. Visit your grandchildren. Try to make peace in your family. By the way, sometimes in families, peace cannot be made. Sometimes in families, siblings can't make peace. But parents and children and grandchildren, come on, Charles, you're better than that. You only have 2 kids. And do you blame your son? The British hate Harry and they hate Meghan. I've never understood that hatred. My friend Piers Morgan hates them more than anyone. I've never understood it. You guys don't get why Harry doesn't like his stepmother Camilla, who was having an affair with his father that humiliated his mother. You don't get that? I mean, she's being protective of his mother. What don't you get? She died when he was what, like 12? How old was he? He was 12, Harry, I think, right? I get him. I get why he'll never accept Camilla. Most children aren't going to accept a stepmother who their father was cheating with while their mother was alive. I get it. But Charles, this is your son. This is your legacy. The monarchy is meaningless compared to a relationship with your children. Don't you agree? Isn't it? That's why it's called the royal family. I know that you guys internally call it the firm, but it's not a firm. It's a family. Go and visit your grandchildren. Show them you love them. That little act would so reconcile, Harry to his negative feelings about you. So you're going to say, he said stuff about us publicly and he attacked us in books. Okay, you survived. And maybe he'll apologize. I think that Harry should not have said negative things in public because you can't disrespect parents in public. But I get how hurt he is. His mother dies in a car accident with Dodi El-Fayed in front of the whole world, and then he has to walk behind his mother's coffin, and he can't even mourn, and the whole world. And I mean, this guy's had we think it's a privileged life. I think being a prince would suck. Listen, I was very close to Michael Jackson. I saw what that level of fame did to Michael Jackson. And Michael wasn't even born into it. He had to earn it. And then he became the king of pop. And what good did that do him? So I'm going to end by saying this. I saw the Michael Jackson movie. I personally didn't care for it. My wife loved it because, we knew Michael well and it reminded her of Michael and nostalgia. I didn't like it because it showed only the Michael Jackson artist, pop star. It was a concert movie. and the music's beautiful. I didn't like it because it didn't show the real Michael that I knew. But I'll tell you one thing. I asked myself a simple question, which is at the heart of that movie. Was Michael Jackson better off? His father says to him, do you want to be living here in Gary, Indiana, working in the steel pits, as I've done with 9 kids, a poor black family in Gary, Indiana? Gabe, let me ask you this question. Let's deal with this in the next show. But listen to the question. That is how the movie starts. His father says to him, do you want to practice every day and give up your childhood and not be on the playground, which Michael always complained to me about, especially in our book, The Soul of Michael Jackson? His father said, do you want to be in the steel pits? The kid said, of course not. Would Michael Jackson have been better off working as a coal miner, steel mine, and be alive today with a wife and, let's say, 3 kids, Blanket, Prince, Paris, married to Debbie Rowe, whoever he would have married, but still be alive, living in a 4-bedroom house, 3-bedroom house, nothing fancy, able to afford 1 vacation a year, but he'd be alive and his kids would not be attempting suicide like Paris recently did, which is terrible. I knew her when she was a little girl. Or was he better off with his legacy? He died at 50, but he's the king of pop. I asked my kids this. I said, but look at his legacy. I said, but who cares? He's not alive. My opinion is simple. He would have been much better off working in the steel mills. Maybe there would have been other economic opportunities. By the way, he didn't have to be in the steel mills. I'm just saying, even if that were the worst of what his father said, I think he would have been better off. I think that this whole royalty thing and fame and money, and believe me, I'm as seduced, well, royalty I'm not seduced by. Money, yeah, I love money as much as the next guy. I'm just not going to live for it. But it killed Michael, literally killed him. It killed Diana. Diana was better off not marrying Charles. It was never a fairy tale. But I want you to think about that question because that's at the heart of the Michael Jackson biopic that's out now, and I'd love to hear your answers. But until then, God bless you guys. Gabe, thanks for the show today. God bless you all.